It all started on an ordinary evening with me, Emma, just like any other night, cooking dinner in my kitchen. The aroma of spices filled the air, and I was in the zone, whisking and stirring, almost forgetting about the world outside. My phone buzzed on the counter. I quickly wiped my hands on a towel, reached for it, and without much thought, tapped on the notification. I didn't think much of it at first. It was from my aunt. She often sent me random videos or updates about family gatherings. Nothing that seemed unusual. But this time, there was something different in the air. The video played, and I immediately recognized my mother's voice. The words that came from her mouth hit me like a thunderclap. Emma should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us. My stomach dropped. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard. I looked down at my phone, and my heart skipped a beat. I wasn't prepared for what followed. The camera was shaky, and I could tell it had been recorded by accident. Someone had left their phone on, not realizing it was filming. But the words, the tone, they were so painfully clear. A pathetic failure. That's what Emma is, my father added, his voice filled with mockery. But at least she's good for something, paying our bills. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The video kept playing, and the cruel laughter of my family filled my ears. They continued, without hesitation, voicing their true feelings about me, the person who had given everything to them. I had been the one to cover their debts, pay their rent, and sacrifice my own savings to make sure their lives stayed intact. Yet, here they were, mocking me. My mother's voice echoed once again. If Emma ever stops sending money. And then there was my aunt's smug comment. She's too soft to say no. We just guilt her into it. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. They weren't just speaking about someone else. They were talking about me. The truth I had never wanted to face hit me all at once. The family I had believed loved me had been using me all along. Before I could even process the shock, the video disappeared from my screen. A notification popped up. Message unsent. My aunt must have realized her mistake, panicked, and deleted the video. I stared at my phone for what seemed like hours, my fingers trembling, unsure of what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her, demand an explanation. I had every right to call her out for what I had just seen, but something held me back. I didn't respond. I put the phone down and decided that I wasn't going to react. At least not immediately. I needed a plan. The next morning, I went through my usual routine, but everything felt different. The sun still shone through my curtains, and my coffee brewed, as it always did. But this time, there was a new awareness, an unfamiliar clarity. For the first time in years, I was no longer just going through the motions. I was outside my own life, looking at it from a distance, seeing everything for what it truly was. Then it happened. My phone buzzed again. I looked down, and the message was from my mom. Morning, sweetie. Just checking in. Hope you're doing well. I stared at it, confused. My mom never just checked in without a reason. There was always something more behind her words. A hidden request, a favor she needed from me. Sure enough, just a few minutes later, another message popped up. By the way, rent is due soon. Can you send it by Friday? There it was, the same request, wrapped in a seemingly inauthentic greeting. I felt a mixture of anger and sadness welling up inside me. But this time, something in me shifted. I had always been the one to give. For years, I had paid their rent, covered their bills, and bailed them out whenever they needed it, no matter how drained I felt. I kept going, believing it was my duty, believing that this was what family did for each other. But that video, it shattered the illusion. They didn't care about me. They only cared about what I could provide. I knew what they expected from me. I had been trapped in this cycle for years, but not anymore. This time, I wasn't going to fall into their manipulative games. I typed my response, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, I thought about what I would normally say, something like, "Of course. No problem. I'll send it over soon." But I deleted the words. This time, there would be no excuses, no apologizing for something I didn't owe them. I typed simply, "I can't this month." I took a deep breath, stared at the message, and pressed send. My phone buzzed almost immediately. "What do you mean you can't?" My mother's frustration was palpable through the screen. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a sip of my coffee and let her stew in confusion for a while. My mind raced as I thought about the many times I had been guilted into saying yes. This time, though, I was in control. But things didn't stop there. My phone buzzed again, this time from my aunt. "Sweetie, is everything okay? Your mom is freaking out. Please, just send the money and everything will be fine." I almost laughed. I couldn't help it. For years, I had been the one holding everything together, always sacrificing my own well-being for them. And now, they were panicking because I wasn't playing along. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I simply typed, "Baby Giuseppe, I have some unexpected expenses this month. I can't send anything. Sorry." I felt a strange sense of power in those words. Power I had never allowed myself to have before. I set my phone down and waited. What would happen next? Would they guilt me into changing my mind? Would they accuse me of being selfish? Ungrateful? I didn't know, but I was ready. This time, I wasn't going to give in. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about money, it was about control. For years, I had been controlled by their expectations, their demands, and their guilt. But now, I was taking control back. The silence that followed spoke volumes. For the first time, I wasn't the one begging for their approval. I wasn't the one desperately trying to make everything right. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. The silence didn't last long. It was only a matter of minutes before the storm hit. My mother's next message came in like a wave crashing against a cliff. "Emma, what do you mean by unexpected expenses? What could possibly be more important than your family?" There it was, the guilt trip. The same manipulative tactics that had worked on me for so long. "You're being selfish," she said. "You know, we're counting on you. We have no other option right now." I stared at her words, no longer feeling the weight of responsibility that used to come with them. For the first time, I wasn't the one carrying the burden of their problems. I wasn't their safety net anymore. The messages kept coming. Faster this time. My aunt chimed in, trying to soften the situation. "Sweetheart, don't do this. You know your mom is just upset. Please, just send the rent. Everything will be fine." Fine for who? I wondered. Certainly not me. They never once asked if I was fine, if I was okay. The moment they needed something, I was expected to drop everything and fix their problems. But now, the tables were turning. Instead of replying immediately, I let the silence linger. I let them stew in their confusion, in their desperation. And when I did respond, it was short and simple. "I'm sorry. I can't help this month." No explanations, no apologies, just the truth. That's when things got ugly. My father's message arrived next. "Emma, this is unacceptable. You're being selfish. We raised you. We've done everything for you. And now you're going to act like this? You owe us." The entitlement in his words made my stomach turn. They thought I owed them, that everything I had done for them over the years was some kind of debt I could never repay. But they never saw the toll it took on me. They never saw how much it cost me, physically, mentally, emotionally. I sat there staring at the message, not knowing what to say. But I knew, deep down, that no words would make a difference anymore. They weren't interested in listening. They were just angry that I had refused to play my part in their endless cycle of dependence. But it wasn't over yet. The next message was from my aunt. This time, it wasn't just text, it was a voice message. My heart skipped a beat. My aunt never sent voice messages unless it was something serious. I hesitated before pressing play, but something told me that this message would change everything. Her voice came through, sharp and impatient. Emma, listen, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this isn't funny. Your mother is losing her mind. Your dad is furious. And honestly, I don't blame them. You've always been a little ungrateful. But this is beyond selfish. My chest tightened as I listened, but I forced myself to keep going. You have a good job, don't you? You make more money than any of us. You don't even need that money. Meanwhile, your family is struggling, and you're just going to wake up one day and decide you don't care anymore. Her tone turned darker. You owe them, Emma. After everything they've done for you, after all the sacrifices they made, they gave you life. And now you're just going to walk away, pretend they don't exist. What kind of daughter does that? I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I listened to her words. But instead of feeling guilty, I felt something else. Something empowering. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need to feel guilty. They didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a tool, a resource. And then came the final blow. If you really want to be that kind of person, fine. But don't expect them to forgive you. Don't expect to come crawling back when you realize how much you need them. Because once you cross this line, there's no coming back. The message ended, and I sat there, numb. But in that moment, I knew something deep inside me had changed. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't afraid of losing them because, in truth, I had already lost them. They had never cared about me. They had only cared about what I could do for them. And now that I was no longer willing to give, they would show me who they really were. I put my phone down and took a deep breath. It was over, or so I thought. The next day, as I sat in my living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that things had shifted forever. I had taken control. I had said no. But the silence that followed felt suffocating. My decision was starting to weigh on me. There were moments when I questioned if I had made the right choice. Was this really the end? Was I going to cut off my family completely? But then my doorbell rang. The sound of the doorbell, early in the morning, caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart raced as I walked to the door. I hesitated before opening it, but I knew who it was. It was Jason, my brother. When I opened the door, he stood there, looking disheveled, his face a mixture of anger and desperation. His eyes were wide, bloodshot. He didn't even greet me. Instead, he launched into his accusations. Are you serious, Emma? What the hell is wrong with you? Mom is freaking out. Dad's losing his mind. You're just cutting us off like this. I leaned against the door frame, my arms crossed. I'm sorry. Jason, did you think I was going to keep paying your rent, keep covering your bills, while you sat there, doing nothing? His jaw tightened, but I could see the unease in his eyes. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't expecting me to stand up for myself. This isn't about money, I said, my voice steady. It's about respect. You all never cared about me. You just cared about what I could do for you. And I'm done. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Instead, he shifted on his feet, trying to find a way to make me feel guilty. Emma, don't do this. You owe us. That phrase, you owe us, it echoed in my mind. But this time, it didn't have the same power over me Instead of feeling obligated, I felt liberated. I wasn't the one who owed them anything. They owed me an apology. Respect, decency. I stood firm. No, Jason, I'm done. I'm not your ATM anymore. You want money. You get a job. His face twisted in frustration. You'll regret this, he muttered, storming off. I closed the door behind him, my heart still pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. For the first time, I had said no, and it felt right. The weight of the decision I had made didn't immediately lift. But as the days went by, a strange sense of calm began to settle over me. It wasn't the relief I expected, but it was something close. Something like freedom. Freedom from the chains of guilt, from the constant expectation that I had to sacrifice myself for a family that had never truly seen me. The days stretched on, and with every moment of silence, I realized I wasn't the one who needed them anymore. It had taken years of self-sacrifice, years of being the one to always step in, to always be the one holding everything together, for me to finally understand that I was allowed to live my own life. I didn't owe them anything, but that peace I had begun to feel was short-lived. It came late one night. Another message. My heart sank as I saw my father's name flash on the screen. Emma, you can't just walk away from everything we've done for you. You're making a huge mistake. Come back. We'll talk about it. I stared at the screen for a while, unsure of how to react. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I wanted to forget about them, move on with my life. But I couldn't. This wasn't about me trying to find peace. It was about showing them who I was now. I wasn't the naive girl they could manipulate anymore. I wasn't their source of money. I was someone different. I knew what I had to do. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. It was time to remind them of the reality they had so conveniently ignored all these years. I spent hours gathering everything, every financial record, every payment I had ever made, the bills, the receipts, the countless times I had come to their rescue. I wasn't going to let them twist the truth anymore. I wrote a letter, a final invoice of sorts, addressing everything they had taken from me. Here's a detailed summary of everything I've done for you over the years. I'm done being your lifeline. I'll no longer be your ATM. And I'll no longer let you make me feel guilty for choosing myself. Consider this my final invoice. You don't owe me anything anymore, but you will owe yourself the realizations of how much I've sacrificed. All because I thought family was supposed to help each other, not to drain each other. I attached all the receipts, the bank transfers, and the records of payments I had made. Then I did something I had never done before. I sent it to the family group chat. For years, they had used this chat to guilt me, to manipulate me into helping them. They had used it to remind me of how much I owed them. But now it was my turn. I replied with a simple but powerful message. You all talk a lot about what you've done for me, but you've forgotten how much I've given up for you. You never needed me. You just used me. I'm done. This is my last message. Don't ever contact me again. I hit send. The silence that followed was almost deafening. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. No more guilt, no more manipulation, no more pretending that I was the one who had to fix everything. I was free, but as I leaned back in my chair, basking in the quiet, another message arrived. This time, it was from Jason. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll regret this. Family sticks together. I smiled to myself. It was the same message he had always used, trying to make me feel guilty, trying to manipulate me one last time. But this time, it didn't work. I didn't need them. I had my freedom. I had my life. And that was all I needed. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel like I was the one who had to apologize. I was no longer their punching bag. I was in control of my life and it felt good. As I turned off my phone for the night, a sense of peace washed over me. I didn't have to play their game anymore. I didn't have to sacrifice myself for people who had never truly appreciated me. And you know what? That peace was worth everything. In the end, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about causing a scene or making a grand gesture. It's about reclaiming your life, standing up for yourself, and saying no when it matters. The sweetest victory is the one where you finally get to live for yourself.